Hello, and today we're going to be talking about losing and winning. Here are the main battles that occurred during the American Revolution. And to set up what is going on here, George Washington and the Continental Army, um, after the British basically lose Boston, they evacuate Boston because um, the Americans bring in some cannons that can shoot at their ships, and so the British are very protective of their ships. They know that they can't hold it, so they decide to leave Boston. But then, like the Empire Strikes Back, they come in and attack New York City. So I have this map here, and you can see New York City is right over here. Okay, I'm trying to, I know my cursor is wide also, but I'm making a circle. Here's New York City. So the British come in and attack the Americans, and they chase them all the way through New Jersey and into Pennsylvania. Okay, I hope you can see that a little bit better. So the Americans are in a world of hurt. They are collapsing. Their um, army doesn't have to come back in the next year. Their enlistments are up, and so they need to do something in order to turn this around. They don't have any ammunition. They don't have enough clothes. It's just a terrible condition. They've been beaten by the British all year long, and now they're sitting in Pennsylvania, and George Washington has to figure out what to do. So several things happened to inspire them. You can see here we got Phillis Wheatley, an African American poet, who writes a poem, Proceed, great chief, with virtue on thy side. Thy every action let the goddess guide. A crown, a mansion, and a throne that shine, with gold unfading, Washington, be thine. She is very supportive of what Washington is doing, hoping that he wins the revolution. Um, Also, another thing that I wanted to point out was I skipped over because I wanted to save it for this. We have the American Crisis. Where I lost it. There we go. All right, so right here on page 94, I skipped this earlier, but I wanted to save for this because this is the time period. Now that the Americans are on the brink of destruction, they're about to lose, and Thomas Paine, as we talked about a couple days ago, wrote this in his book, The American Crisis. He says, These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will in this crisis shrink from their service of their country. But he that stands now deserves the love and thanks of man and woman. Tyranny, like, I'm not going to say that word, Hell, is not easily conquered. Yet we have this consolation with us, that the harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. What we obtain too cheap, we esteem too lightly. And he goes on to say that heaven knows how to put a proper price on things, and why would we think that liberty would be something that's easy to get? Of course, we're going to have to fight for it. Of course, we're going to have to suffer. Of course, we're going to, but the people that go through it are going to be heroes, heroes to not only America but to history. These are the times that tribe men's souls. This is a very tough time. He recognizes that. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from their service of the country. That is very, very poignant because the sunshine. You have any fair weather friends? You ever hear that expression? They're your friend when things are going great, but then when things are not, they disappear. And that's what he's talking about. The people here that are still fighting are not fair weather friends, and they're going to do their duty, and that our struggle is going to be tough. Tyranny is not easily conquered. All right, so that leads us to um, the first battle here. We're crossing in the Delaware River. We have famous paintings of George Washington crossing the Delaware. He sees a lot of ice flows, and that's very accurate. It's a very cold year that year, and so they had to navigate through the ice and get over all his cannons and his soldiers that, sometimes they didn't even have the proper footwear. And so I thought I remembered how to zoom in. Anyway, no. So he gets his guys on the boat, and let me get back to this map here. They go across the Delaware River, and they surprise the British and their Hessian allies, their Hessian mercenaries, here and win some small but for the Americans, very important battles. Keeps them in the fight. People, the British are like, it's not a big deal. But the Americans, it is like a lightning bolt. It's a jolt to their morale, and people start re-enlisting and getting back into the American army so they can continue to fight. Without those victories, the revolution might have been over right then and there. So this is very, very important of knowing about the crossing of Delaware. It could have been over right there, and George Washington saved the revolution on that one decision. Now, the most important thing about today, what I want you to remember, is Saratoga, the turning point. So after the American Washington saves the American army here in 1777, same year. Later on, what the British decide to do is that okay, we're attacking the middle colonies here. We're having a tough time, but really the tough part where we really lost was in Boston, and all these New England people here are really the trouble. If we could just isolate them and cut them off from the rest of the colonies, then we could deal with them and maybe talk to the other colonies. You got all these Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia. Maybe we can talk to them and reason with them and just fight this group of Americans. So what they decide to do is here we got the Hudson River goes up. We already talked about the Hudson River, and then you've got Lake Champlain going down. So if they can cut this area off here, if they can control the Hudson River and Lake Champlain, then they effectively cut off New England, and then they could just deal with New England by itself. Well, the general's doing very well. He gets through Lake Champlain. Then they have to march down. They take take Fort Ticonderoga, which was thought to be impenetrable, right over here, and then they keep marching on. But more and more Americans arrive and arrive, and finally they keep fighting. And finally at Saratoga, the British have to surrender after a prolonged fight, and an entire army of British surrendering to these Americans. This is the turning point of the American Revolution. So right up here in upstate New York is Saratoga, and that's the turning point. The first time the Americans get a major, major victory. This gets the attention of the other Europeans like France. Benjamin Franklin is over in France trying to get them to trying to convince them to join up. And now that they've got this victory, the French finally start talking to Benjamin Franklin so that he can bring them over to our side. And that's this part right here, new friends. France and Spain didn't know if the Americans had the stuff to win this war, but after Saratoga, they started believing that, hey, maybe these Americans can win this fight. So that's where I'm going to leave you off today. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.